Anyway, starting on this side, we do have a manual pull start, but this is for backup purposes only. This is actually an electric start machine. So you shouldn't need it in most cases, but if the battery is dead, you have a plan B. Right here, we do have a knob for controlling the fuel valve, the ignition, and the choke. And I know this is an area where a lot of people have strong opinions, myself included. I personally prefer separate controls for the ignition, the choke, and the fuel. And I think a lot of people watching probably do as well. But that's mostly because we know how to work those controls. I think a vast majority of people really don't know how to work them. So something like this takes all the thought out of it. But there are a few kind of pitfalls with this system. I guess the first one is that it needs to be calibrated properly. So sometimes I find that, when you're in the run position, maybe the choke is still on. Or maybe when you're in the run position, the fuel is actually off. So, that's something that'll become pretty apparent if that is the case. And if that is the case, we can go in and fix it. The other issue or the other complaint I hear is, how you run the carb dry. You can't. And, well, that's true and not true. If you just shut it off, then yes, the carb is not dry and you don't want to keep fuel. You don't want to store fuel in the carburetor. So you can actually take off the panel and drain the carb. There is a drain on the bottom of the bowl, but that requires tools. And, I guess I get the point that people don't want to take tools. They don't want to take a cover off. So there is a workaround for that too. Instead of just turning it to stop, you turn it most of the way to stop. And like that, the fuel flow will stop or be severely restricted. And within a couple minutes, the engine will stall. And once that happens, just turn it all the way off to ensure the fuel flow is stopped. Anyway, moving around here, this is kind of where everything's happening. And I guess starting on the top, we do have a vented fuel cap. So you need to make sure that is on before you start the machine, or else the tank won't vent and the engine will starve for fuel. Down here we have all the outputs. We have a 30 amp, we have some USB charging outputs, and we also have a 20 amp output. Now, these are all protected by these circuit breakers, and it seems obvious that they should be, but some inverters, some expensive inverters don't have that. They actually rely on the inverter to detect a problem and shut things down. And of course, if the inverter is the problem, then, where's your backup system? Well, they are simple devices. They are completely independent, and they will ensure that nothing gets overloaded. So really, every generator should have these, but some surprisingly don't. We also have a couple outputs here. These are for paralleling. So this is a tri-fuel generator. This is actually a very big selling point, but it does something special. We'll talk about that in a minute. But with these parallel options, you can double the output. So when running on gasoline, this machine can pull 3,500 watts. And of course, if you have two connected together, you're going to get 7,000 watts. And when running on propane or natural gas, one machine, 3,150 watts, or twice that running on two. So that is a really nice feature. It is fairly standard, but not all inverters actually have that feature. And this right here, and maybe that to some extent, are kind of the big points on this machine. Besides being tri-fuel, you'll notice there's no knob, there's no selector to switch between gasoline and propane and natural gas. And that's because it's automatic. When you connect propane up to this and you turn the fuel valve on in the tank, it sends pressure into here. This can sense the pressure, and when it sees there is pressure, it will automatically switch from gasoline to propane. And you can just run until that tank is empty. It'll see the drop in pressure, and it will switch automatically back. So that right there is really the unique feature. I haven't seen that before. And it's actually a great feature because when running on propane, I don't know about you, but I can never tell how much fuel is left in the tank. So I'm finding that I always shut the machine down, swap the tank out, before it needs it, really just as a preventative measure. And I end up wasting a bunch of fuel. So with this automatic switchover, you don't have to worry about it. It'll switch over back to gasoline. You can swap the tank over, open the valve on the new tank, and it will switch right back to propane. And the beauty of it is you actually have a lot more capacity. I mean, this tank is just over, I think it's 2.2 gallons, which is 8.5 liters, which in itself will run this unit for quite a while. And then when you add a tank like that, which is a 5-gallon, 20-pound tank, you're basically tripling your runtime between the two tanks. So yeah, that is a nice feature. These machines are very efficient, and between the two tanks, you could easily run for a day or more. It really depends on what kind of load you're putting on this machine. Anyway, this doesn't ship with oil. Actually, small engines never do. So the first thing we need to do is add some oil. I think the battery's back here too, so we'll connect that up as well. So we need to pull this panel off. While I'm at it, I'm going to pull the panel off over here, not because we need to, but because I want to see everything that's inside. So I just want to show you this real quick. I did unpackage this before turning the camera on, but it was packaged quite well. There was plenty of padding inside, and it was actually shipped in a box, inside of a box, with padding in between. So it arrived completely intact, no damage from shipping. And inside the box also was a user manual, and we have this little toolkit or accessory pack right here. There is a special canister for filling the oil. If you've ever changed the oil on an inverter, you know it is a messy process. We have an adapter for that 30 amp output. We have an extra spark plug and a spark plug tool. And in this bag right here, we have the propane line and regulator.